Scott Goo, he officially made the announcement that Windows 10 is now on 400 million devices.
Right.
But how solid of a number do you find that? I mean, of course, we've dropped down from the initial target of 1 billion devices by the end of the year. Now, we know will they make 500 million before we hit the end of the holiday season?
Oh, that's interesting.
I think so. Do you?
No, I mean, well, so at the current clip, no, but of course you do see a seasonal bump because of the holiday selling
New
season.
machines,
so
right?
It's possible. They don't have that kind of a goal, right? They were talking about 1 billion active PCs or active devices by
2018.
2018, and that's moved out a bit, obviously, since the original proclamation, which I'm sure they regret. But they still do plan and do expect to get to 1 billion active devices.
Around that time, or slightly later perhaps than that, but they still are saying 1 billion, yes.
Right. I would be surprised if they hit it by 500 million by the end of the year. I don't think so.
Would that count devices that have been upgraded and then downgraded and upgraded several times?
Yeah, those get counted twice.
Okay, because I've got like 15 devices on this laptop.
No, actually, so it's interesting, as you move from selling software in a store, where you can say, look, we shipped X number of these boxes, to counting something that it seems a little more nebulous, which is monthly average users, or in Windows 10's case, active devices, right? This is actually an instance where this is a more meaningful real-world number because it's instances of the operating system running and being used actively. It's actual users, right? In the past, when Microsoft used to sell 20 million Windows 7 licenses a month, and it was sort of like sell, it was a real sale. It was something they could put down in the books. But those things were not necessarily brought up and running that month. In fact, most of them probably were not that month, right? That's the nature of that style of accounting, right? And so I think for normal people, for people just sort of looking for something that is a real world metric, active users is or active devices, I should say, is a really good one for Windows 10.
Yep.
An accurate one.
Agree. It does make it a little hard to compare it to previous versions and how they were doing at this point, because with Windows 7, they weren't talking about active users. It was a different metric. So I think this is a good metric. I think it means, people are actually using it versus just have it on a shelf somewhere and maybe one day.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Or maybe running some other version, right? Because a lot of times, Windows 7 days, it's a little hard to imagine they would have gone back to Vista, but a lot of businesses might have been running Windows XP. In other words, what they're buying is a Windows 7 license because that's what Microsoft is selling, but you get downgrade rights on that license, and they might have gone back to an earlier version of the OS. So it's kind of hard to tell from those numbers how many people were actually using it, which is why usage share numbers from net market share or whatever are kind of interesting. And Microsoft can look at how many machines are hitting Windows Update every day or whatever and get figures that way as well.
Would there be a better way to count this? I mean, is there a better metric that they could be collecting that shows actual engaged Windows 10 users?
Actually, when you get into so active sort of does mean engaged, I guess.
I think it does.
I think for Windows, this is the most accurate way to gauge the success of this thing. I think this is the way to go. They don't do this with everything else. One of the things, we sort of complain about because we try to understand the health of Microsoft's various businesses is they have different ways of judging the success of different businesses or different products. When the Xbox One fell behind the PlayStation 4, for example, they stopped telling us how many of these things they sold. And now they talk about engagement, which is things like number of hours spent on Xbox Live, number of hours spent playing games against other people, whatever these things are. And I think those numbers have their value. But unlike with Windows, I sort of feel like unit sales mean something because this is a retail product and they literally are shipping boxes. And a sale is a sale. I think those kind of things make sense. But obviously they have they're accounting for things in different ways depending on the product or service.